Crossing beyond. That was a good passage. And when Pastor gave this to me, and I listened to his message last week over YouTube in our Facebook site, I was fascinated because this is the thing that we must be doing. Because looking at our next leaders, looking at the one that are growing in our midst, they look Filipinos, but they are so Canadians. Actually, sociologists call them coconuts. Some of you already knows this. Brown outside, white inside. And this is something that are happening. Don't you find this fascinating that sometimes your kids will go home, you talk to them in your native language, Tagalog to some, Visaya to some, Ilocano to some, but they answer to you in English. And these are happening. And I think our pastor is timely sounding the trumpet of giving us a signal that time is changing and the church cannot be late about it. And I'm echoing his message this Sunday. I want to read this to you. In his autobiography, Mahatma Gandhi wrote that during his student days, he read the gospel seriously and considered converting to Christianity. He believed that in the teachings of Jesus, he could find the solution to the class system that was dividing the people of India. So one Sunday, he decided to attend services at a nearby church and talk to the minister about becoming a Christian. When he entered the sanctuary, however, the usher, and it's not Philip, refused to give him a seat and suggested that he go worship with his own people. Gandhi left the church and never returned. That hurts. If Christians have class differences, two big words, class differences. He said, I might as well remain a Hindu. That ushers, I'm hurt about that because I'm a Christian. And his autobiography continued in saying that ushers' prejudice not only betrayed Jesus, but also turned a person away from trusting him as Savior. This morning, let me pass to you from the passage the following. Class differences can also be in church. Can also be in church. Now, for most of us who goes here, we all have favorite seats. Ooh, here we go. And it's okay. There's no such law that you cannot take a favorite seat. Here's when it becomes a problem. When someone takes and occupies your seat, are you okay with it? Sure. Okay. But these are something that we need to. I'd like to pass this to you because our passage will be tackling this big time. And his name is Jesus. You see, the first century Christians in Acts has the same problem. Some people thinks that the company that they keep, they allow themselves to avoid other cultures to get a close contact with. You see, when you read the first century Christians, they have this problem too. They actually have problems of distribution of food. Distribution of food. Our passage this morning, however, tells us that here's an outcast, a Samaritan, who is the first in her village to meet the Messiah, and what happens to the entire town as a result of her testimony, the whole town received who Jesus is because of the testimony of the Samaritan woman. You see, class differences. Those are people who are marginalized. Now, I want to make a simple observation, okay? This is not a generalization, but somehow these are happening very frequently. The first time I went home to the Philippines was 2005. 2005. I heard that there was a sale at SM and with blue jeans. So I was looking at blue jeans. That day was so hot. So I was wearing my puluntong shorts. It's long and but I was not the look like I will buy something. In shorts, in sleepers, and a shirt because I was perspiring. Here's the first sentence that the sales lady told me. Sir, those sizes there is only size 32. That really got into me immediately. And then to make things worse, you know what this is what she said. Exact words, and I'm not making this up. You could actually find pants that will be good over there. Because this year's sale, that has been the sale for a long time. I won't tell you how I reacted. It was not nice. But that was, you see, the looks. The looks. She forgot to look at my pocket because I can buy two. But you see, we could be sometimes this sales lady, is what I'm saying. We could sometimes be, just by the look of a person, can be very judgmental. I have another story. In 1990, I have a small friend who is, his name is Nana from Ghana. It's in Africa. He's so small, but he's a bull. I mean, he's so strong. What we do in Bible school in Dallas, Texas, is we mow lawns of the rich people so that it will help us pay for our books. To make the long story short, we were mowing some lawn of a rich, the mansion is big. Someone peeked in the window and saw us mowing their lawn. This is the exact sentence. This is 1990, okay? Yeah, the lady said, "Get that monkey off my lawn." You know, he cried. And I said, "Go home, I will finish this." When he left, I just found out it's a big yard. But I did. But these are some things that are happening. You see, I'm giving you 2005 and 1990, but when you look at the news, it's still happening today. It's still happening today. These are people that are marginalized. Sometimes we could marginalize our seniors. Our seniors. We call them the typewriter and the telegram generation. See, some of you don't know what a telegram and a typewriter is. But you see, sometimes you will find a senior using an iPhone like this. And when we say, using an iPhone, marginalizing people. We can all be guilty of something. This pastor needs to be very careful because I myself have a problem with my accent and yet I laugh at someone's accent. I'm looking at him now.
Amen.
But you see, do you see what I'm trying to say? But even in our own kind, did you know we could be sometimes marginalizing another accent, another province? For instance, cooking. The Kapampangan will say they're the best cook. The Ilocano will say, "You don't know how to cook pinakbut." Right? We could be so. The Tagalogs. Alay, wag mo akong lolokoy, tatagpasin kita. We could go on and on with all these things, but I want to take you to that mindset because it's possible it's happening in church. And this passage, I read it to you extensively because when Pastor gave it to me, I had a hard time making an outline, and so I just put verses for you just so we could look at it and tackle it, and I call it crossing beyond Jesus' style, crossing beyond class differences. You see, I'd like to take you there. Look at verses 1 to 6. I like this. That's the highlight verses I'd like us to look into. He left Judea. You know, there's a controversy that are happening there. The controversy was this. They were talking about Jesus or John's baptism. And in that controversy, they were so in almost agony of who is right. Is it John or is it really Jesus? You know what Jesus did? He left. He left. And he went back. He doesn't like the controversy. You know, when you look at this carefully, there's not much theologically thing that you could find with those two words, he left. But I kept on looking. Did you know that sometimes little things of conversation can get really into us? I think it will be good to take the leadership of Jesus whenever we want to avoid a foolish or, and it's not my own words, it's the NLT. It says, when you want to avoid foolish or stupid arguments. 2 Timothy 2:23. We could be sometimes into an argument of so little things, nothing to do with what we do as a church. It could be the style of cooking. And really lost it all. I want you to cross beyond that. Whenever those things are happening, specifically in our church, we need to be careful of the mindset of, is this really matter to our salvation? Does it really matter? If Jesus was really here, will He join us in our conversation? This is something that we need to think about, because that controversy that they were making a big deal of, Jesus actually turned His back and never joined the controversial conversation. Now, I gave you Judea to Galilee through Samaria. Now, I know this is just so little of a map, okay? There's Judea, there's Galilee, this is where Jesus left, okay? Now, I want you to understand something. When these people from Judea or Galilee are going to visit each other, they don't cross through Samaria. They will go through the Jordan River, which is blue, or by the beach area there, which is called the Plain of Sharon, and then go down a mountain called Mount Carmel to reach Galilee. That's how much they hate the Samaritans, or Samaria. When you read the passage that Jesus had to go through Samaria, that is not just a sentence. That is saying, hey, Jesus crossed a border. So He came to a town in Samaria. And this is something that we need to look carefully, because as we look at things, we need to be really talking to ourselves. Am I really ready to reach beyond and cross beyond my own culture? This is a call. This is a call, because otherwise we will be left behind. You know, I always thought, going back to that controversy, I gave it a thought. What would be a controversy that we could be talking about today? And I wrote something, okay? It could be this way. You know, Pastor Chris, when we have a building in North Vancouver, somewhere here, if you paint it blue, I will not go to church. You know, some of you, that is really funny. But did you know we could go to that kind of foolish arguments? You know, there's a church somewhere in the south. They really separated split the church into half because of the color of their carpet. People could really get into this controversy. Meanwhile, Jesus was setting an example that, hey, you're talking about a controversy. Look at the move I'm doing. And there is some, the author that I was reading who wrote a lot about this, he said this move that Jesus is doing is actually an urgency. The urgency that you're talking about so many things. There's people to win. That's what's happening here. And this is so passionate Jesus that I'm looking at. That's why I'm showing you this map. And I tried to picture this to you as well. This is like, if you know where I live, this is like Pastor Ben living in South Vancouver. I don't want to pass New Westminster. So what I did is I go to Knight Street. I went to Oak, all the way to the US, around to go to Surrey. Because I hate New Westminster. That's what's happening. Did you know Jesus broke through all this? And he said, this is very important. My friends, Mahatma Gandhi could have been a Christian, and India would have been a difference today. But it's Christians who got in the way of Christ. But we won't be going there. I'd like us to look some more. Because verses 7 to 9. Okay? I just want to highlight some things to you. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? That's a no-no. That's a no-no. The Samaritan woman said to him, you're a Jew. I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? Jews do not associate with Samaritans. And you know, the very thing about this, whenever I think of our place, Vancouver, did you know that when Jesus talks about class differences, Jesus shattered the dividing wall of class differences, and we need to do it as well. For some of you, there's a culture you cannot stand. The smell. For some of us, cannot even go to a restaurant because of the lousy service. But did you know that when you study their culture very well, there's a reason why? The smell. I have a first generation Chinese best man in my wedding, and he said, Ben, you need to understand, in Richmond, you think of the Richmond Mall that there's 300,000 people, and so when a senior bumps into you, it's nothing because there's too many of us. And we're being misunderstood. When you eat bagoong, dilis, and pinakbet, it stinks too. And these are being Filipinos, and I'm being straightforward to you because Jesus asking for a drink from this woman is a no-no in that century. Did you know they think of the Samaritans as dogs? Dogs. And so when Jesus asked her for a drink, it's a no-no. It's almost scandalous. That's Jesus on class difference. With the Samaritan woman talking to her, asking her for a drink. That's a no-no. But Jesus did. Jesus did. And there's something there that we need to put to heart. Because the next one is even harder. Verse 10 to 24, I know there's a lot, but I call this the best talk show. I call this talk show Crossing Beyond. And there's a lot of things that the exchange between Jesus and the Samaritan woman, you need to read it through. If you have time again, read verses 10 to 24. But I'd like to highlight to you too. Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, The water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. That's our message. You know why I call it the best talk show? Because the host is Jesus and the guest is Samaritan woman. Do you like Ellen? Come on, don't. It's okay. It's okay. Do you like Ellen? Oh, yes. I know a lot of you likes Ellen. But when you enjoy Ellen because of the people she's helping, man, her generosity in Christmas time, I would love to be there too. But I want you to know, if you really like a best talk show, you need to read John chapter 4 verses 10 to 24. Because this is a talk between Jesus and a Samaritan woman. And there's an exchange with Jesus like no other. And this morning, I'd like us to be the audience. Because there's three things. I'd like to summarize them to you to read. Verses 13 to 14. Number one, that verse 10 to 14, Jesus is saying to this lady, remember, there's scarcity of water. That there is a fresh flowing water creating and maintaining life. This is the kind of water we serve people. Can you imagine if this is the message that Jesus is giving the Samaritan woman? What is that to us today? Did you know that when you speak about encouraging words, the truth about helping people, about simply loving people, about simply smiling to people, did you know that the Jesus living water in you just splashed someone? I read that from a youth pastor. I would like you to look into this carefully because the conversation between Jesus and this Samaritan woman, she can already feel, man, there's something about this guy. Here's my call this morning. If you are not excited who Jesus is, there is no excitement when you talk about Him. Tonight, El Salvador missionaries, we go out to the street talking about the living water that you carry. If there's no excitement to you about this, what Jesus has given and done to you, there's no excitement. The excitement that you have is the trip to El Salvador. But the trip itself is exciting, but I want you to be excited. You have the living water. We carry this living water. It's fresh. It's flowing. It's creating and maintaining life. I actually gave you a Greek study. Because this is something that when we read 13 to 14, yeah. But I want you to know that when Jesus was talking to this woman, when Jesus was expressing Himself, He was actually giving her the best that life can offer. Here's the question. When you talk to someone and you're offering him or her Jesus, do you feel that? See, there's another one. Verse 15 to 18. The kind of brokenness we see every day. Do you remember Jesus said, go, by the way, go and get your husband. We know, according to the record, she's not even married. She's up to the 6th and it's a boyfriend. You know why I'm expressing that to you? Today, you will be ministering to the people, and the kind of brokenness we see every day is the kind of brokenness this woman have. Can you imagine? She's a Samaritan. She is dirty. She's got a bad past. Jesus drank water served by her. You see, this is the kind of world that we serve. They are hopeless, they are helpless, they are worthless. And whenever I see those words, it's nothing about God anymore. It's Satan who keeps whispering to people who doesn't have Jesus that your situation is hopeless, that there's no one who can help you, that you are really worthless. Do you know how many people of any culture, including Filipinos, have been thinking this way? I could tell you over and over and over again of stories of ladies who was a nanny here for a very long time and finding out that she doesn't have a family anymore. She only supports them because he got married with someone else. Stories after stories that hurts, and this is the kind of brokenness that we do serve here in North Vancouver. I don't know, you just have to go to the mall and you can see people who are hurting. And by the way, for those of you who are hurting, maybe it's time to pass how God has given you hope, as God has given you help, and God called you worthy. And it's time to pass it on. It's time to voice out that this Jesus gave me help, gave me hope, and I'm worthy in His sight. Are you excited about this? This, my friends, is crossing beyond. Our pastor is sounding the alarm. Are we reaching beyond? Are we crossing beyond? And I'm asking you, my dear friends, this is the kind of message we have. And then verse 19 to 24. This is important. The woman said, "We Samaritans worship at Mount Gerizim. You Jews worship at Jerusalem." I thought, how can we have that today? Well, you worship. Did you know I invite someone here in our church, and they were actually in front, and they did not come in because they didn't see a temple? They thought it's a community center. Pastor Ben must have given us the wrong address. You see how this mentality are happening? And I thought of this verse when we put our chairs here, when we put all this setup here. What makes this a church? The setup? No, the people. The people. And the people will come not because of what we do here. This is a factor. But they will come because of the people in here. Please say, you agree? That's, you see, when Jesus said to this woman, you have to worship me in spirit and in truth. You see, last Friday, two of our young adults blessed my heart about this. Worship in spirit and truth. It's Kevin and Ruben. And I'm closing my eyes so I would not misquote them. But Kevin said, and it blessed me so much. Kevin said, you see, when you want to listen to God, you have to be there for God. You have to present yourself to God. You have to obey it. You have to read it. Because when you do all these things, you will actually hear God. That's what Kevin said. And he said, you need your spirit to touch the Spirit of God. And that powerfully spoke to me. And then Reuben said, you know why you cannot hear God? Because you are not near God. Did you get that? You cannot hear God because you are not near God. By the way, Ruben, you left your folder there. I have it. I love those notes of yours. Actually, I want to do it again. This is how that worship in spirit and truth was expressed by these two. I'm going to tell something to my wife, okay? You can hear it anyway. Did you hear it, Mitch? Did you hear it, Bebang? What did I say? Because of the microphone, right? I'll do it again. Did you hear me, Bebang? I just said the same word. You know why Mitz heard me? Because I was near her. You know why we cannot hear God whenever we worship Him in spirit and truth? Maybe we're far from Him. You know, this worship in spirit and in truth is something that we need to grab hold on to and say, if Jesus can really do it to a Samaritan woman, someone who is really not, she's actually marginalized in her time. She's actually so many wrong things about her life, and yet Jesus reached out to her. So if you're thinking you're too far from God, this morning, I'd like to ask you, worship Him in spirit and in truth. Worship Him. You see, all these things, your outline this morning looks extensive, but I'd like you to pick and really look all these verses, because it's speaking loud, it's shouting, and it's saying something that we need to do. And the last verses that goes this way, then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am He. You know, we could actually believe this, we could actually receive this, but my question this morning is, are we active about it? You know, when you read verses 39 to 42, will you highlight it? 39 to 42. You need to read chapter 4, verses 39 to 42, because a whole community was saved because of the testimony of this woman. Testimony of this woman. So this morning, crossing beyond is, do you believe this? Have you received it? And my question this morning is, are we active doing this? And you know, Pastor ends up his message on a personal note that this year he spent a lot of time with Nina. And I thought that was beautiful. But he expressed it personally to you because he's making a point. So, I'd like to echo that and personally express something to you. But it's not about myths. It's about my personal practice that I heard the challenge from our pastor, the passage that was given to me. Here's my personal goal for 2018. Crossing beyond is speaking English when I'm in church, specifically when I'm with other people. That's my goal. Because this guy standing before you so loved Tagalog that I could go on and on and on, and I forgot that Ahmad is close to me. And that's not acceptable to me. We may need to go to crossing beyond something. And I am asking you, New Life Alliance Church, I stand before you as your pastor. If we're really going to reach beyond and cross beyond, one of the things that we need to really be concerned about is English. Because you could be expressing yourself in English in an accent or so. But if you love, your accent will not be heard. Did you hear me? I always thought, why are these young people listening to a person like me who cannot even pronounce he or she the right way? Sometimes missing it. You know why? Because I could tell you, I love them. And I will serve them. You can too. This is not a pastoral thing. But Pastor, I'm expressing to you personally, crossing beyond to me is speaking English when we are in church, and especially with others. I have number 2. Crossing beyond is inviting others in picnic, in dinner, and fun events in 2018. But I have one more words. Not of my own kind. And when I say not of my own kind, I will be straightforward to you. I love the group here, BLG, I love the group 1, I love the group young professionals, and the young adults. But guilty as I am, I don't think I have visited the North Vancouver life groups. I think I need to cross beyond. If pastor is blowing the trumpet that we must, I should. And I stand before you. If there's anyone here that in my own ways have never really reached out to you, forgive me. If we are going to change the culture in our church, it will start with this guy standing before you. Number 3, and I'll end with this. Crossing beyond starts inside our church. It starts with this guy. Jesus did it, we can.